Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with the final video of What If I Made the New Warriors. So this video will be focusing on everybody's least favorite creepy couple here, Snowflake and Safespace. So let's get to it. So here are the characters of Safespace and Snowflake, and here is the description of them as described, or rather, as described by the Marvel article introducing them. So it says, psychic twins. All twins are psychic, but where's psychic-er? Snowflake, a cryokinetic, can materialize snowflake-shaped shuriken projectiles for throwing. Safespace can materialize pink force fields, but he can't inhabit them himself. The reflex only works if he's protecting others. They're hyper-aware of modern culture and optics, and they see their superheroics as a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying. They're probably streaming this. Snowflake and Safespace are the twins, the writer says, and their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory. They take those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. Safespace is a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock. He can create force fields, but he can only trigger them if he's protecting somebody else. Snowflake is non-binary and goes by they, them, and has the power to generate individual crystallized snowflake-shaped shurikens. The connotations of the word snowflake in our culture right now are something fragile, and this is a character who is turning it into something sharp. Snowflake is the person who has the more offensive power, and Safespace is the person who has the more defensive power. The idea is that they would mirror each other and complement each other. So that's what Kibble Smith and Luciano Vecchio, who is the artist for the New Warriors, came up with. My take on them is going to be completely different. No psychic twins. Their powers will generally remain the same, but I've put a few tweaks on them. And what I did was that what interested me in reading this was the part where it says that, where is it? Somewhere in the beginning. Where is it? It's the part where they say that they see their superheroics as a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying. Well, I decided that since my own brother and I went through being bullied in school, and these characters are supposed to see their heroics as some sort of meditation on using violence to combat bullying, so I sort of took that idea and built my version of the characters around them, right? Using violence to combat bullying, and so that's the idea. That's the idea that I ran with my take on them. So here we go. The names. All right. So with my version of the character, his real name, since they never actually gave any of the characters' names in the Marvel article, my version of Safespace, who will not keep that name, is named Dwayne Miller. Dwayne, for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and NBA great and Heat legend Dwayne Wade, and Miller comes from Reggie Miller, who was my favorite player growing up. So that's where his real name comes from. His superhero name is going to be Peacekeeper, after the peacekeeping forces that work for the UN. And then we have Snowflake. Snowflake's real name will be Diana Miller. Diana for Diana Taurasi, who is a basketball great in the WNBA, and of course, like I said, the family name is Miller for Reggie Miller. Her name will be Peacemaker for the gun. And as a tandem, right, as a brother sister team, their relationship will certainly not be what it's implied on the cover. Their relationship, I think, is more Elisa and Derek, right? She's sort of the bossy older sister. I think there's only about a year difference in their ages in my version, which means that she's probably 15, he's probably about 14. So she is the bossy older sister. He's sort of the put upon brother who doesn't want his sister bossing him around and telling him what to do with his life. But I think that they have a very healthy, loving brother sister relationship. So it'll be Elisa and Derek with no doubt a lot of influence from my own relationship with my older brother. Sorry, with my younger brother. I'm the older sibling, and I don't have an older brother. So it would be that. It would not be Jamie Cersei, and it certainly would not be Ultimate's version Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Not doing that here. Nope, nope, nope. So they are bully hunters. They are bully hunters who call themselves the Peace Patrol. And they certainly mean to maintain peace. So long as you're not a bully, you'll be fine. If you are a bully, you're going to have a problem. So next is the look, right? So for the former Safespace, now Dwayne Miller, who calls himself, or at least when he becomes a superhero, will call himself Peacekeeper, right? His thing is that he's based, or rather his face, his look, be based on boxing legend Joe Louis, right? A younger teenage Joe Louis, as close as one could get without being sued. Whereas Snowflake, who would now be Diana Miller, and with the superhero name of Peacemaker, would be based visually after Tatiana Ali. So that's where their faces would come from, and of course the artist, if I had one, or if I could draw, would make them look like siblings, right? So they would look similar to each other, but these would also be the sort of real life inspirations for their appearance. So now the body, right? Starting off with Dwayne here, because the one thing everybody was talking about and bringing up and making fun of when it came to Safespace is the fact that he doesn't look like a stereotypical jock. So where his face is based off of a boxer. His body would basically be The Rock meets Larry Wheels. So big, bulky, muscular, right? Just this modern day Hercules is basically it. Probably not as muscular as The Rock and Larry Wheels, because he would be a wrestler. He'd be a grappler, so he'd be a bit more bulky, maybe not as veiny as they are, but since he's a grappling specialist, he would definitely be very big, very brawny. So his fighting styles would be, of course, wrestling. I think that he's on his school's wrestling team, or at least he's trying to get on the school's wrestling team. So wrestling, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So those are the martial arts styles that he would have knowledge of and gain more knowledge in. Again, he's a grappling specialist, big, strong, brawny dude. Now for Diana, for the former Snowflake, if her brother is a big, strong grappler, that means that she is a striker. She's a striker, I would say, very quick on her feet, with an emphasis on kicking. So I think she'd be studying various martial arts that are strike heavy, such as karate, such as taekwondo, and Muay Thai. So she would have some punching ability. I know these pictures were all kicks. So she would definitely have some punching ability, but that wouldn't be the emphasis of her fighting style. Her emphasis would definitely be kick heavy. Now for the body, I see her as very short, very slim, not not very large, right? She's in contrast to her brother. So something similar to Michelle Watterson, also known as the Karate Hottie. So there's that. Now the style. So now I'm going to start first with Dwayne here, and I'm going to start first with their like everyday regular clothing because they start out as high school students. They're not superheroes yet, so the first thing I'm going to touch upon is what their day-to-day wear is when they're not doing superhero stuff. So I think with him, when I kept thinking of the character and what I wanted him to represent, I kept seeing a Buddhist monk in my head. So I think as a sort of visual callback, without being too on the nose, I think that the sort of like color scheme he would have are reds and yellows. I know that in certain Asian cultures, I think in Japanese, for example, yellow is the color of courage, and I think he's a courageous young young man, or at least he has the potential to be. So I think that that would be his color scheme for his regular clothing. Lots of bright reds and yellows. Uh, Probably a shaved or maybe closely cropped hair. Again, for the Buddhist influence. I'm not sure if he is a Buddhist. I haven't decided that yet. But I definitely think that he's interested in Buddhist philosophy because while he's not a pacifist, I think he definitely does his best to be peaceable, even though he's a bully hunter and employs violence against bullies. I think even in that, he wants to be as peaceable as he can, and I will expound upon that later when I get to their individual personalities. So I think closely cropped hair, bright colors, reds, yellows, to sort of harken back to the Buddhist influence of the character. But his actual regular wear would be pretty much what young men growing up in an inner city neighborhood wear. So, jeans, hats, hoodies, sort of urban streetwear, basically, right? Stuff like this. He would probably lean toward shorts because when you're as big as he is, it's hard to find pants. So I definitely think he would lean toward long shorts, basketball shorts, this type of style, sneakers, things of that nature, right? Very casual. He's a teenage boy, right? He's 14. He may look like a grown man, but he's only a 14-year-old boy, and he'll dress as such. Now, Snowflake, I think, is like most girls her age, right? So she's focused on looking cute. I think she's a little boy crazy, even though she won't admit it. So she definitely wants to look cute. I think that she would tend toward colors such as blue, pink, white, because although she is a trained martial artist, I don't think she'd be the type to let that define her style or her presentation. And I certainly don't see her as the type who would let it strip her of her femininity. So she would definitely be like most girls her age, dressing, casually, but also to look cute. So, white sneakers, blue jeans. I think she would definitely have the braided hair, as we see here in this picture. Totally do the ripped jeans thing like all the kids are doing these days. I personally don't understand why that style is back, but for some reason it is. But anyway, I definitely think she would do the long micro braids, and I like it because it harkens back to the MMA influence without looking like a MMA fighter's hairstyle. It still looks very cute and feminine. And I think she would probably at the start have her hair dyed red, because I could definitely see her as like a Rihanna fan, a big fan of her music, and I could definitely see her doing the red in copying her favorite music artist. So something like this, simple, casual, fitted right? Nothing too crazy. Now, in their superhero personas, I think they would have a unified look. As much as I don't like this design that Vecchio came up with, they are supposed to be a team, a duo, and with the team, right? There's uniformity. Everybody is supposed to look alike. You see this in team sports. You see this with the police. You see this with the military, right? Everybody looks the same. So I would keep that idea, but do it my own way. So they would not have separate colors as they do here in this picture. That's not happening. That's not happening, right? They would have the same colors, right? They'd be wearing the same uniform. It would just look different on them because one is male and one is female. So their costume, in my opinion, if I had it my way, would be a blend of Apollo and Blue Marvel. Something very strong, very authoritative, something that um, makes them look like in authority, right? Something that people would respect. I think that the color scheme would be a majority blue. Probably take a lot more from Blue Marvel than it would Apollo, but I think it'd be blue, white with some gold. In particular, because those colors tend to represent peace. You know, especially with the blue, right? The UN peacemakers have the blue helmets. Police often wear blue tops or blue uniforms, right? So that tends to have this connotation of like peace and law and order. Gold and white tend to be symbols of like purity. And since these two don't see themselves initially as the bad guy, right? They see themselves as doing their high school a service. They would definitely, I think, sort of reflect that, right? Their vision of 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 their of themselves and what they're doing, they view it as a positive. They wouldn't see themselves as the bad guys. So I think they would definitely have this sort of costume, classic superhero look with these very positive, again, peaceful, but still strong and authoritative colors. So that's what I think their superhero costume would look like, more or less. Now, the personality and the powers. So we're going to start with uh, Dwayne here, who is no longer Safe Space, but now Peacekeeper. So I think he has a personality very similar to Kwai Chang Caine of Kung Fu, which again is sort of a reference to the Buddhist influence on the character. Uh, for those who haven't seen Kung Fu, watch it. It's a very good show. But Kwai Chang Caine was this traveling, wandering martial artist, former Buddhist monk and whatnot, and he was a very peaceable man who only fought when he was left with absolutely no 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 choice. There's the word I'm looking for. Right. And he fought only when he was attacked or when someone else was attacked, and I could see that in in Dwayne, my version of Safe Space. Right. I could definitely see him as the type to use verbal judo to try to de-escalate a situation, to talk someone down. I think he'd much rather settle a fight by not fighting, settle an issue by talking, right? And I don't think that he's a fan of I guess you could say spectator violence, like like boxing or MMA, and I think he absolutely hates uh, pro wrestling because he doesn't see glamour or the appeal in violence. He views violence as a necessary evil used ideally to protect another person or yourself. He doesn't see it as this thing that should be entertaining to people because he's been bullied, right? And he certainly didn't appreciate being bullied, and he doesn't exactly like beating people up. He just views it as something that has to be done to keep other people safe, right? So that's sort of his take on violence. And I think even in the violence he has to commit, or at least he feels he has to commit, he's more about, I think, restraining his opponent than necessarily beating them down. Like if you throw a punch at him, I think he'd be the type to like catch the punch, twist your arm behind your back, and sort of like push you up against the wall and tell you to stand down instead of try to beat the tar out of you. But he can beat the tar out of you if he needs to. He can suplex the hell out of you. Just don't make him have to do that. Now, for his powers, I kept the shield thing from the original description, I guess you could call it. And I think with Dwayne, the way his shield would work is like this, right? He's a teenage boy, so his powers are starting to awaken, so it wouldn't be something he could automatically always summon. Sometimes he could, sometimes he couldn't. He would learn in time how to summon it on command. Now, when it is working, the way I see the shield working is this. It's something similar to what we see here with Sonic. I think it's something that would surround him and anyone that he's protecting. I think he'd have a very limited range initially on how he could use it. For example, I think he could only make his shield surround himself and maybe one other person standing like right behind him initially, and then as he grew older and he got stronger, he'd be able to sort of widen his literal circle of protection, right? But the downside to this is that once he's activated the shield, first of all, he and who's ever in the shield with him cannot move, so you cannot run. If you were to try, if you were in the shield and you tried to like run out of it, it would kind of act the way like force fields do in like Star Trek, right? It would suddenly like ping and you would sort of like be like pushed back a little bit. So that's the way it would work, and it would surround him and who's ever with him completely. So under the feet, above the head, around the back, the whole thing. Now the way I see the shield working is this. First of all, especially once he gets control over it. So the way I see it is this. The shield takes energy to create and to maintain. So it's an energy drain. In the beginning, it would be a big energy drain. As he got stronger and more used to it, it would be less of a drain, but it's still going to drain energy. So his shields would be strongest at the beginning of a fight when he's fresh and is like well rested, has plenty of energy to burn. If he were to summon a shield like in the middle of a fight or towards the end of a fight when he's beat up, when he's very tired, when it's like the fourth quarter, as it were, I think it would be much more difficult for him to summon a shield, and the shield that he did summon would be much weaker, right? I think that he can sort of like put more energy into the shield and make it stronger, but if he does that, then what happens, of course, is that the shield is stronger, but he is weaker. And I think the way the shield works is this. So long as he has the energy, he can maintain it. But as he gets physically weaker, the shield is going to get physically weaker. And at a certain point, he's just not going to have the energy anymore, and the shield is going to break. And if he falls unconscious, naturally, the shield will also break. Another thing is that His shield, especially in the beginning, while it can defend him against some things, it can defend him against some things. It cannot defend him against everything. For example, let's say a mob of like kids, like descended upon him and tried to like beat him up. He could summon the shield to surround him, and those kids' punches wouldn't be able to break the shield. And so long as he's feeling fine and has plenty of energy, he could probably maintain that shield for a few hours. And on top of that, whatever is physically attacking the shield will get hurt. For example, if someone punches the shield, they're gonna come back with bruised knuckles, right? So like most regular standard attacks couldn't break the shield. But if you have like a super powered being, like a Hulk level character, or you get like a Captain Marvel or someone like that, they can break that shield literally by just breathing on it, right? They can break that shield by just flicking it with their fingers. So it cannot, especially in the beginning, it can protect them from a lot of things, but not everything. For example, if someone chucks a car at him, the shield is going to break. It is not strong enough, and he is not strong enough to reinforce it to make it withstand a car flying at him. So it does have some limitations. Naturally, as he became more skilled with it, the limitations would lessen. But certainly in the beginning, right, it can't do everything. It can do a lot of things, but it can't do everything. So that's the way I see his shield ability. Now let's go with the former Snowflake. Now Diana Miller, the Peacekeeper. So the way I see things is that if her brother is Kwai Chang Caine, then she is Joe Pesci's character out of Goodfellas, right? You think I'm funny? You think I'm here to amuse you? You think it's funny, haha? Right? I think she's very I think she's really very angry because of what she went through with the bullying. I think they were both bullied growing up, and I'll touch upon that later. But I think whereas his response was more of compassion and trying to quell the violence, hers is to be like hyper aggressive, hyper reactive whenever she feels threatened. And I think she views most things as a threat, even if she necessarily isn't completely aware of that. So I think she has this almost comical short temper, and definitely overreacts to things similar to the way Joe Pesci's character did, but because she's compensating for her own insecurities, right? She's short, she's very skinny, and she's really, I think really she's just very scared. She won't admit that she is scared. She wouldn't admit on pain of death that she is scared. But I think in truth, she's just really, really frightened. I think whereas her brother has come to a certain peace about what happened to them with the bullying, I don't think she has. And I think that's a big reason why she is the way she is. So she's definitely a trash talker, right? Whereas her brother de-escalates, or at least tries to de-escalate situations with his words. She's definitely the type to antagonize someone that she feels as is a bully, and sort of antagonize them into attacking her so that she can beat them up. Because I think the way she views their bully hunting is sort of her own personal war against the bullies that bullied her, right? So her, at least initially, she's not necessarily as noble about it as the way her brother is. This bully hunting for her is more an excuse to attack bullies than it is necessarily to stop them. Also, unlike her brother, she's a big fan of spectator sports like boxing, MMA. Huge, 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 huge wrestling fan. So her powers, right? She's a cryo, a kinetic. So like her brother, her powers, because she's only what, 15. She's only 15, so her powers are glitchy, right? So it's gonna take her some time to actually learn how to use them. Now, the way I see her abilities is very different than the way Kibblesmith and Vecchio do. She would not start out being able to make shuriken. That's not happening. At least not yet. I think in time she should be able to make ice throwing weapons like shuriken and darts and things of that nature, but not on the outset. She would need like a mentor character to like teach her how to do that, and then teach her how to use those type of weapons and all that. So she wouldn't start out with that ability. She'd have a more simple all-purpose use for her ice powers. So the way I think her ice abilities would manifest is this. I think first she would unintentionally just give off this very cold vibe. Like I could see like a running gag where like she like passes someone by, and they start like shivering, right, as if it were like a cold day. Excuse me. And I think that she would be very cold to the touch initially. So that's kind of how her powers would first manifest themselves, right? She would be about as cold as, say, like a cold winter's day in New York City. Right? Cold enough that, like, if you're near her, right, and you breathe, you can actually see, like, the puff of air, right? So it's not like, bone-chillingly freeze you to death cold, but certainly cold enough to make you uncomfortable. And I think that when it comes to actually like practical use of her powers, I think that she can like freeze things that she touches. And in the beginning, I think what she would do is that she would either create sort of like a thin covering of like ice over her hands, so that whenever she like punched someone, they would act as like the ice version of like brass knuckles, right? So a little more weight to them. It would hurt a little bit more because it's a thin block of ice hitting her opponents. And then I think as her power set grew and she learned how to use them, she'd be able to do things like ice blast with her hands, and being able to like freeze people to a wall and things of that nature. But she wouldn't start out with those abilities. She would have to learn those. She would have to earn those, and then later on she'd be able to actually form small ice weapons like knives, daggers, darts, shuriken, things of that nature. But that would be way, way, way down the line. So, right. So although they are very divergent in personality and in powers and even intent with their bully hunting, they are in agreement on one thing: they are the law, and they hunt bullies. If you're a bully, run to the hills, run for your life. Now, the story. The story, I think, basically goes like this. I think that they come from a rough inner city neighborhood in New York City. Maybe Red Hook, maybe some other part, maybe somewhere in the Bronx. I haven't quite decided, but I can tell you this much. It is not Harlem. They are not from Manhattan. Not Disney, sorry. Marvel has this weird obsession bordering on a fetish with making black people from Harlem. Not every black person in New York City lives in Harlem. I know I don't live in Harlem, right? So they would definitely be from a inner city neighborhood, and they would have an upbringing and a family life that is very common to someone who grows up in the inner city. So dad isn't around, mom is working hard and trying to make a better life, but she's a work in progress herself. So what I think happens is that when they're at school for many years, they're bullied, right? They're picked on, and I think at a certain point, they either tell their mother or the mom finally finds out. And I think that she, being a loving mother, goes up to the school, and she talks to the teachers and she talks to the principal, and they do nothing. So I think in time, what she does is that she gets her kids enrolled in like a self defense course. There's like a community center event giving out like free self defense courses for like a week or something, right? So she enrolls her kids in that, and sorry, and I think the kids take to it. Of course, the daughter Diana starts. She tends towards striking martial arts. The son Dwayne tends toward grappling arts. And what I think happens is that because eventually, right, the free classes end. So what I think happens is that the martial arts instructors, like the head martial arts instructors who like run the program, are like, you know, are they gonna stay? Can you pay? And the mom's like, look, I'm working hard, I'm trying, but I can't afford classes for them. So I think that the martial arts teachers take pity on her, and they're like, look, we'll give them free classes if they are willing to stay after class and help clean up and all that type of stuff. Do like odd jobs for us, and we'll continue to train them. And the mom agrees, and the kids agree, and the teachers make it clear that they're only teaching these students martial arts for self-defense. They are not to fight for pride. They are not to fight just because someone makes fun of them, because they are provoked. And the Dwayne and Diana agree. Yes, we will not fight if we are provoked. We will only fight if we are physically attacked, or someone we see somebody being physically attacked, right? So that's the deal that they make with the martial arts teachers. Well, they try very hard to keep up their end of the bargain over the years, right? And they endure the bullying. In particular, I think Dwayne starts lifting weights like around the ages of like maybe 12, 13, to put size on for his wrestling, and I think he believes, well, if I'm big and strong, then people won't attack me, people won't pick on me. So he starts doing that as sort of like a defense mechanism, as it were. But they keep trying very hard to not give in to the urge to fight whenever people pick on them. But one day, when they're walking home from a school, they're walking home, a group of kids sort of follow them, push them around, call them names, never actually physically assault them, but, antagonize them, right? And Diana loses her temper, and it goes down. They beat the tar out of these kids, right? A lifetime of bullying is let loose on this gaggle of kids that attack them. The best way I can describe it is that there's been, at least here in New York City, there's been an instance recently of like a group of boys like jumping this like one girl because she stole something. So it would be similar to that, except that the brother and sister didn't steal anything, and they're the ones who actually win this fight with a combination of their martial arts skills and their glitchy powers. So they beat these kids up. Naturally, they get in trouble for it. You know, they get expelled from school. Their martial arts teachers kick them out of the program, or I guess their arrangement ends because they broke the one rule. They were not supposed to fight unless they were physically attacked, and they were not physically attacked. Of course, they try to justify their response, but nobody listens to them. So they feel that no one outside of mom who really can't do anything because she cannot be in school with us, right? So they get the feeling that no one cares and that the only people they can really depend on is each other. And so what happens is that they vow to only fight if they are attacked or provoked, right? So they vow basically to protect themselves and each other, and that vow slowly grows over time to not just protecting themselves and each other, but also basically getting to the bullies before the bullies can get to them. So it ends up becoming a prey has become the predator type of situation, right? So now they're looking for the bullies, and they're not just looking for the bullies who bully them. They're also looking for the bullies who bully others, right? So they're walking around, they're attacking bullies, even if the bully is like not in the act of bullying when they find that bully. If that person's known to be a bully, they're getting beat down, right? Because they're acting as judge, jury, and executioner. So if you're known as a bully, if you've bullied them, if you've bullied other people, or if they think you might start bullying someone, say you're like in a fierce argument and you look like the aggressor in the situation, they are coming, they're going to find you, and they're going to make you pay. So what's happened with this is that they are, how do I put it? They view their bully hunting as a positive thing. They see nothing wrong with it. Their schoolmates are absolutely terrorized, right? And that actually really plays on Dwayne's conscience because he doesn't want to scare people. I don't think Diana really cares at the moment. I think she likes the fact that they're feared and that she's feared. But I think for Dwayne, because he really is a nice, peaceable young man, I think it really weighs on him that they are feared and not respected like the way he thought that they would be if they did this. And I think in particular, he wants friends. He wants to be like every other teenage boy, right? He sees pretty girls and he wants to talk to them, but he doesn't know how, and he has no other boy, right, that he can talk to about how do I approach a girl and all this other stuff, right? Because dad isn't around, so he can't ask his father. So I think it really, really weighs on him, the fact that they are feared and they don't really have friends in the school, right? Whereas with Diana, I think she gets a kick out of it. I think she gets a kick out of being in a object of fear as opposed to being vulnerable and being an object to be preyed upon. That's how I think that they view it. But basically, they are unintentionally terrorizing the school. So the bullies fear them, and so does everybody else. So the way I think that the new warriors get involved in this is like this, right? So I think that screen time, since the poor boy can't sleep anyway, I think that he comes across several social media posts across different social media, Insta, Snapchat, all this other stuff, whatever the kids are using. And he keeps hearing about these two kids, right? This brother sister duo who effectively have their high school on lockdown. Everybody's scared of them, right? The teachers are scared of them. Uh, even like the public safety, who are sort of like school police, as it were. Even they are afraid of these kids. Everybody's afraid of them. So he informs the original New Warriors team about these two, and he tells them where the school is, and the original New Warriors team goes and checks it out. Right? They try to talk the kids out of doing this. They don't want to hear it. So they sort of end up fighting against each other, but then I haven't decided quite what yet, but then some sort of bigger event happens where they sort of have to team up. They have to team up, and that's when the original New Warriors see that these kids are not all bad, right? That they really do intend to help and protect people. They just have a very skewed uh, uh, perspective on that, right? So they would deal with whatever it is that is sort of making them work together, and in the end, um, what's his face? Night Thrasher would offer them, spots on the team. They would be apprehensive at first because again they feel like their purpose is to keep their school safe, and if they leave, uh, the bullying is going to happen again. And then their mother's like, look, you could do more if you're part of this team. You could protect more people, and you wouldn't be kicked out of school anymore because you're always fighting. So she kind of like encourages them to join the team, but I could also see her having a conversation with Night Thrasher, and pretty much being like, if my babies get hurt, kind of like the stern black mother stereotype. It's like, if my babies get hurt, you're gonna get hurt, that type of thing. And then I think that's how they would join the team. So I think that because they still need to get an education, right? Their mother would insist that they do online school, online classes, earn their education, complete their education that way. I could see distance learning as something that probably most of, if not all of the new warriors are doing, since they still have to get an education, right? They still have to go to high school somehow. So I could see them all doing that. And I could definitely, in the case of Dwayne and Diana, the Peace Patrol, I could definitely see their mom always like checking up on them, telling them you better call me once a week, and then she's like calling them all the time. I could definitely see it as like a running gag that like they forget to call her, and then like 5 minutes later she's like blowing up their phone, or she somehow got the phone numbers of like other members of the team, and she's calling like Night Thrasher, and then Night Thrasher's calling them like, would you please call your mom? Right, that type of thing. But that's basically how I see their story, at least starting out, right? Two kids mean well who mean well, and who are trying to be protectors, but who are going about it the wrong way. So this here concludes the If I Made the New Warrior series. I hope you all have enjoyed it. I've received a lot of positive feedback from it. Thank you so much. Please let me know what you think. Please let me know what you would do. I know this video is on the long side, but it was about two characters. It was bound to be a bit of a project. So I hope to hear from you all. Again, please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a good day or night. Be healthy. Stay inside. Keep yourselves entertained. And I will be back with the next one. Bye.